Tropical storm Francine has formed in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, and it's organizing rather quickly. It may become a hurricane tonight. Hurricane warnings are up for the Louisiana coast. We'll talk about that. Of course, we've got late summer weather for the rest of this week across much of the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic states, Ohio Valley, and Great Lakes. So let's get going on this Monday night, the 9th of September, for the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And if you'd like to lend some support to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, you can do it by shopping on Amazon and using the referral link that's at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast. You buy your stuff. Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin. Doesn't come out of your pocket. It comes out of theirs. And everybody leaves happy. So thank you for considering supporting the Joe and Joe Weather podcast by shopping our affiliate link on Amazon. So, Joe, we're not going to go through the month of September without a named storm. We've achieved it.
That would have been very difficult to do.
Yeah. I seem to remember reading years ago when I was really into reading the annual summaries for the hurricane season. There's an odd year somewhere in the last 60 or 70 years where there wasn't anything in the month of September. But yeah, it is indeed would have been an extremely odd occurrence, but it is there. It is actually organizing pretty fast. Went from an elongated trough with a little low pressure center on it. Now the trough is gone, and it looks like a tropical storm. And I'll bring up the satellite loop here, and we could take a look. And this is with the lightning strikes because there's a lot of convection that's going on. It's usually a sign that something is trying to get going here, and it shows up quite well on the lower left. You can see the turning of the circulation. You can also see the banding with those some thunderstorms pushing northward. Doesn't look like it's moving very, very quickly. And since it's going to go north and then turn northeast to the Louisiana coast, it kind of stretches out the time before landfall, as opposed to, say, if it was going northwestward or going straight northward into the Texas coast. And this allows for some strengthening, I would think.
Well, interestingly, just to add to what you said as we started the onset of our conversation, and I just pulled this up from the Fox Weather website, who writes that historically it is the peak of the hurricane season when there is the highest chance of tracking a cyclone across the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Atlantic Ocean. But some years turn out to be more active than others. Since 1851, Joe, 732 cyclones have been tracked across the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico in September. But during those last 173 years, there has never been a season that has not had at least one cyclone traverse.
I stand corrected.
Well, they do point out that there have been nearly a dozen years where there was only one tropical cyclone reported in September, and that also is very, very hard to do. The most recent year that happened was way back in 1939, one tropical system. Other years included 1851, 1855, 1862, 1890. And of course, in those years, who knew that there might be something in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or off the African coast where something may have formed, but they simply didn't have any ways or means to track it or to take note of it. But those are all the years that had only one tropical system during the month of September, again, the most recent being in 1939.
Before the telegraph, I would imagine, if a ship ran into a tropical storm or a hurricane in the middle of the Atlantic, you wouldn't really find out about it until it reach its destination, if it reached its destination.
Yes.
So yeah, there's probably more than just a few that certainly before the satellite era, and maybe going back before World War II or World War I, there probably have been some cyclones that have just kind of been missed.
Well, yeah, in fact, it's more than just a chance. I'm sure it's a likelihood that there were a lot of systems that we just never knew of in those years that formed and reached their maturity and then faded out simply because we just didn't have any ships or didn't have any ability of knowing that they were out there. But in any case, um, we have our first named system of September, and I'm sure that before this month is over, we'll probably have at least a few more.
Well, we've got this old frontal boundary that is sitting across the deep south and extends out into the Atlantic. And when we look at it from the standpoint of the full U.S. satellite loop here, uh, also tonight, interestingly enough, we talked about this last night. This little upper trough that's moving through upstate New York that is producing some showers and storms. I actually saw that SPC put out a mesoscale discussion saying that a severe thunderstorm watch was unlikely, though they were calling for some isolated uh, severe gusts from some of the cells that are moving there. So that's about the only action really. You go into the Central Rockies and back into Utah and northern Arizona. We're seeing some scattered lightning strikes there, but much of the country is really experiencing some rather nice weather. I'm very curious about what this grayish shading is that's on the satellite that's showing up these streets that run from Minnesota down through Iowa and Missouri and then turn east across Tennessee into North Carolina. I didn't see anything on the watches and warnings map. I don't see any special weather statements. That kind of looks like a little bit of smoke, but no one's talking about it. So I guess it's not a big deal. Maybe it's just enough to show up on the satellite, but not enough to render the Weather Service offices from speaking about them. We do have some stuff going on in the West, although the Weather Service website here, there is wildfire issues in parts of the West here. I'm just trying to read this really quickly. In Nevada, we've got fire weather watches up there. And also, I'm going to guess that that's probably the case when we go further north. This is going into Boise, Idaho. Uh, the fire weather watches up for some counties there in Idaho, western Idaho, and also in southeastern Oregon, and in a few counties in Montana with some scattered red flag warnings. We've got tropical storm warnings and hurricane warnings up for the Louisiana coast. That also extends. They also have a what is that? Is that a what is that pink area? Uh, I got to learn to watch my colors here and try to figure them out. Okay, so these inland counties that you see I'm sorry, these inland parishes that you see in southeast Louisiana, including New Orleans, those are under tropical storm watches, and they have hurricane warnings up south of New Orleans, down near the coast to the mouth of the Mississippi, the Grand Isle, Louisiana. So you can see with the purple area here is all storm surge warnings. Uh, the uh, uh, the forecast track. Let's go. Let's bring up. This is the Hurricane Center's experimental cone, Joe. The experimental cone. The 4 p.m. advisory: 24 north, 96 west. So it's got a, about 400 miles to the Louisiana coast, and they've got it becoming a hurricane in short order. There's an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft there now, so you can see that the blue is the tropical storm warnings. The pink is a hurricane watch. The dark red is the hurricane warning, and the yellow is also a tropical storm watch, and they have them also up for the Texas coastal bend. But the big question is, in my mind, is how there is time here. I mean, because landfall, we're talking probably sometime late Wednesday afternoon or evening.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, there is time here for this to become a category two. And I don't know if it has time to get much stronger than that, but I would, I kind of watch this closely to see. It'll be interesting to see what the recon finds that's down there now. I just checked it a little while ago, and they weren't quite into where the center is. But there's time for this to become at least a Cat 2.
I agree with you. 2 days, 48 hours, almost 48 hours out over that very warm Gulf of Mexico water. And we've seen cases, and I mentioned this yesterday, Katrina, which went from a 1 to a 4 category storm in just a matter of like 12 or 18 hours back in, I believe it's what, 2005 or 2006. So it can happen. This is something they're going to have to keep a real close eye on in terms of intensification. And it's again, even though it's not over the wide open ocean waters of the Atlantic or the Caribbean, and it's kind of hugging the coastline. It's in that Gulf of Mexico, and Gulf of Mexico has been for much of this summer like a gigantic bathtub in terms of how warm the waters have been.
We have a moderate risk for flash flooding for much of southern and central Louisiana and southwest Mississippi. Slight risk that pushes all the way up into southern Missouri, western Tennessee, western Alabama, much of Mississippi, northwest Louisiana, and east Texas. Houston is just outside. They're in the slight risk zone that pushes a little bit further to the north. And WPC's rainfall amounts are in the yellow is 4 to 6. The lighter brown is 6 to 8. That's a small area south of Lake Charles near the coast. And they're showing some 12 to 16-inch rains out in the Gulf itself. So we'll see if some of that, maybe they'll have to up these amounts a little bit. But it is going to produce a sizable amount of rain here, no doubt. And there'll also be 2 to 4 inches in the blue that extends almost to the Georgia, just about to the Georgia state line and over the Florida Panhandle. In Tennessee, up to about Nashville, in Missouri to Cape Girardeau, but not quite to St. Louis. Little Rock in Arkansas is just outside the 4 to 6 zone. Memphis is just outside on the east side of the 4 to 6 zone. So it'll be it'll be interesting to see how this all plays. And the one thing we're sure of, because I got the question, what does this mean for what's going to happen in central New Jersey? And the answer is nothing. So for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, there's no impact here.
Sorry about that, Joe. I needed to tend to something in the other room, but I've been listening to you all the while.
Okay, but the bottom line is this is not going to be one of those storms where the remnants are going to come up and then go north and then turn northeast and east. This is going to wind up going up the Mississippi River Valley and just sort of falling apart there.
Right. As I mentioned yesterday, this is going to be one of those cases where if you are watching TV, let's say your local weathercaster in, let's say, Little Rock, Arkansas, or even St. Louis, Missouri, or Cape Girardeau, Missouri, will be making reference to, well, the rain that we're having right now, and it could be heavy, is due primarily to the remnants of Hurricane Francine, that kind of thing. And of course, we here in the New York tri-state area have heard that innumerable times over the years, that a storm that was at one time a hurricane in the Gulf or along the eastern seaboard is now moving northward and bringing us heavy rainfall. But as you just pointed out, Joe, the upper level wind flow, the overall pattern, very unfavorable for bringing any of that moisture into the New York metropolitan area. And in fact, there's a chance that we may now go through the next 10 to 14 days, 8 to 14 days, without seeing a drop of precipitation. It's going to be that dry here in the New York metropolitan area. This coming off of a very showery, wet, and might also stress muggy summer of 2024. This weather that we're into now is most delightful. Oh, P.S., Joe, I don't know how low you got. I got this morning to the chilliest reading that we have seen since last spring, 46 degrees this morning here in Putnam Valley.
46 here.
Oh,
Well,
well,
46, depending. I've got one thermometer that's 6 feet off the ground. I've got another thermometer. My Tempest weather flow is on my deck, which is about, I guess 15 feet up. and when you extend it out, maybe it's about 18 feet from the ground, and it was 47 on the deck, and the outside down the 6 foot above the ground thermometer was 46. So 46, 47 here this morning. It was cold. It was another sweatshirt kind of morning.
Right, and we did have a few clouds in the sky from a disturbance that passed off to our north. We'll still have some patchy clouds tonight, and then tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, beautiful blue sky. Actually, let me take that back. Wednesday, I did make a mention to the fact that we may see some patchy high clouds veiling the sun. So it won't be a pristine, clear day on Wednesday, but still low humidity, dew points in the 40s, temps in the mid and upper 70s. Can't ask for much better weather for any time of the year.
Yeah. I was just looking at the Air Force Recon, which is there now, and it's not, it's very, getting very close to where the center is, but it's not quite there yet. We'll check it out again a little bit later on. This was the forecast, the model track guidance for Francine up on the screen, and you can see that it's pretty tightly clustered. I guess if you take the midpoint, it comes in, somewhere southeast of of Lake Charles, along the central Louisiana coast, and then just kind of runs up right along the center, runs up right along the Mississippi River until you get into southern Illinois, and then it starts to do all sorts of weird things. But the point is that it's going to make a sharp turn to the right, and you can see it's taking the long route across open waters, which is why there's concern with regards to strengthening. Also, we look at the model intensity guidance. A lot of them have it as a Cat 1, and there are several of them that take it up to a Cat 2 before landfall. So I think that makes sense given what's going on. The other thing that the Hurricane Center did mention that I guess I want to just take a look at is, let me go to the Western Atlantic view because then I can pull up the shear. There is a belt of wind shear here, and it's just as it reaches the coastline. Let me just get rid of this. And so all of this in red, all this area up here in red, right along the coast, is a strong area, a strong belt of westerlies. So we're talking 50 knots or higher. And, there's a lot of shear there. So it's in favorable of an area favorable for strengthening until it gets right near the coast, and then it starts getting into that shear zone. So that's there it goes. It goes right. That's when, that's the one thing that might keep this from getting much beyond a strong Cat 1 or a low grade Cat 2, is that by the time it gets up to the coast, it's going to hit that west southwest shear, those strong west southwest winds in the upper atmosphere. Now, I'm just thinking back to Hurricane Michael, which was in an environment where there was 20 knots of shear going on, and the storm just didn't care. It just wound up strengthening to a Cat 5. And that was one of the remarkable things about that storm, was that when you looked at it on paper, it was sort of like, well, it's conditions aren't that favorable for strengthening, and then just completely took over and just did whatever it did what it did. So I'm not saying that it's going to happen again, but I'm always getting, since then I've been always a little bit cautious when it comes to stuff in the Gulf of Mexico, because weird things do happen there sometimes.
Hurricanes are like cats; they'll do whatever the heck they want to.
Well, I mean, they're in a part of the atmosphere where the winds are usually not that strong, and there's, the pressure, the highs and the lows are usually on the weak side, so you don't always get the obvious steering currents that are going to take it in one, straight direction and everything going in a straight line. I mean, it does look like that this should just do what it's supposed to do in terms of the track. I'm just a little concerned about the strengthening, and the model track guidance and the global models have been kind of sliding this a little bit further east with every run. And I'm just looking here at the 18Z, which is a little bit a shade to the east It passes not that far from New Orleans, or at least the center passes not that far from New Orleans, coming in uh, late Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and then going northward from there through Mississippi. And I get some rain out of this too, which I'm kind of hoping that I do get some rain out of this because we're into these stretches here in North Georgia where in this part of the country, it could rain every day for 2 or 3 weeks and then not rain at all for 2 or 3 weeks. And we're in another stretch here where it's only rained once here in the last month. And that's been it. So hopeful, kind of hoping that we get into some rain here because things are bone dry. But the other thing to notice here with this is the fact that we've got this big ridge in the eastern part of the United States. And this is, looking at this upper area, I'm looking at Wednesday evening, the uh, the westerlies in the upper atmosphere are so far to the north. I mean, they're running right along from northern Minnesota to the northern Great Lakes into New England. From there north, you've got some westerlies. There's just, there's a little, there's ridging off the southeast coast that's building back northwestward. There's a trough that's dropping into the west coast. And this thing is just kind of sitting between all of this with no real push one way or the other. So it tries to lift northward only to run into a strongly building upper high at the end of the week over Lake Superior and northern Michigan. So it can't go. That's as far as it gets. At least on the GFS, the feature in the upper atmosphere gets to western Tennessee, and then it just gets stunted southeastward into Georgia and South Carolina because that big upper high, which migrates to New York State, and that's just going to be a brick wall keeping all the moisture, including the low level moisture, keeping all of that well to the south.
And looking, Joe, at the overall pattern, at least up here in the Northeast. You talk about these stretches that you've had, 2 weeks or 3 weeks of wet weather, followed by 2 or 3 weeks of dry weather. I mean, here, I don't think anybody would be upset to go through a couple of weeks of dry weather, especially after the summer that we've been through. And again, the overall pattern right now seems to favor a string of maybe that long a period of no rain for us. It certainly does not look like we're going to be seeing. I mean, I mentioned yesterday we might see a sprinkle or a shower or two in parts of the Hudson Valley. That is not going to come to fruition. All we had was just some patchy clouds. That was about it. And looks like now it's just going to be dry right on through the rest of the week and into the weekend and maybe into a good part of next week as well.
Johnny Quest hitting super chat. Thank you, Johnny. He got to 27 this morning. Of course, he's at 3,000 plus feet in northwestern Virginia, but that's well done. You got you got your first 20s, and you're not even out of the month of September. By the way, on the radar, you can actually see the inner core of Francine, courtesy of the Brownsville radar. So it's in range, so it shows up on the national map here. It's there. I mean, it's fairly well defined. You couldn't really see it yesterday, but you definitely see it today, and you can see the circulation. Also, you could see some showers and some downpours in the northern Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of the Florida Panhandle and south of Mobile and south of Biloxi, southeast of Boothville in Louisiana. And we've got some showers and storms tonight running around central and south Florida with a few heavier cells there. And then you got this in upstate New York uh, with showers and some thunderstorms that are moving southeast now, getting close to the Catskills, in back into north central PA, and then northwestward from there into western New York. Got three big cells there from Buffalo to Rochester, and there's even a flash flood warning there that's north of Rochester. Most of this should probably fall apart, even though it's moving southeastward. I can't imagine it's going to hold together after after 9 o'clock.
No, I think the air is just simply too dry to allow any. I mean, there might be some debris cloudiness, which is why I didn't go for a flat out clear night tonight. I actually said clear to partly cloudy, based in part upon some of that moisture in the high levels of the atmosphere working its way over our head. But no, it's going to stay dry locally here in the tri-state area for a number of days to come.
Speckling of showers and storms in Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, northern Arizona. And the Storm Prediction Center, that area there is in general thunderstorm activity, also general thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast. And we've got a marginal risk for isolated severe thunderstorms from SPC for upstate New York. That had played out a couple of hours ago with some stronger thunderstorms there. Tomorrow, marginal risk along the south coast of Louisiana. Otherwise, much of the east and south and the Ohio Valley, back into the middle Mississippi Valley, and even into West Texas, nothing. Some general thunderstorm activity in the plains and Rockies. And then we go to day three, and this is Wednesday into Thursday when we're going to see landfall. SPC's got a marginal to slight risk in central and southeast Louisiana, the slight risk in the eastern half in the southern part of the state of Louisiana, southern half of Mississippi at a marginal risk, southwest Alabama, and the western part of the Florida Panhandle. This might be one of these systems that produces a couple of spin ups. I think a couple of tornadoes.
Might be not that late in the season for that to still happen, and yeah, that's it's certainly a possibility.
All right, as far as rainfall goes, next 7 days, if you after tonight, they'll probably be all white in upstate New York and Vermont and New Hampshire and maybe even into Maine. But you get the idea here. From Maine down into eastern Virginia and even into northeastern North Carolina, we're talking not very little, if any at all. And then you hit the wall, and then you go into South Carolina, Georgia. You start to see that some heavier amounts, as much as a few inches in northeast Georgia, northwestern South Carolina, southwestern North Carolina, and then of course you've got all the the bigger rains of say several to 6 inches running up the Mississippi River Valley to just south of St. Louis, and also some big amounts along the Louisiana coast of 5 to 7 in that darker brown. The 10 inches plus for now remains offshore, but one of the keys to the rainfall here, Joe, is that once it goes inland, the center keeps moving, just moves along and moves northward. That would probably prevent the rainfall from getting too out of hand.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of that, what you just pointed out, Joe, a lot of the rain that you saw over upstate New York and New England, that's full front loaded. That's basically based upon what we're seeing now and over the next 12 to 24 hours. Once that's out of the way, you're absolutely right. It's going to be white with no precipitation in the next 7 days. Forecast we'll probably see happen tomorrow night.
Now let's see if they got the 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central time advisory is out. Francine expected to become a hurricane soon. Storm surge and hurricane warnings in effect for the Louisiana coast. 24.1 north, 96.0 west. They're carrying movement north northwest or 340 degrees at 7. And it's 425 miles south southwest of Cameron, Louisiana, 145 miles south southeast of the mouth of the Rio Grande River. And why don't we check out? I'm going to see if the recon has gotten any closer. Yep. Looks like it's made its first pass near the center. It came down from the north, where the strongest winds were 40 to 45 knots. Now let's see what it finds when it goes on the west side, which since yesterday, that's where the strongest winds have been. So it's going to take a while. And also would love to see a pressure print here. Oh, let's see what we got on the graph. Looks like the red is your pressure, the blue is your wind. So the flight level winds, because it came down from the north, again, 40 to 45 there. Pressure down, if I just kind of eyeball it, Joe, looks like it's dropped to about a 992. So it may have dropped a few millibars since the 5 o'clock advisory. So s- strengthening may be going on even as we speak.
So we'll see where this all goes. But it looks like if you live right along the Gulf Coast, and especially along the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast, you're in for some rough weather, courtesy of Francine, over the next couple of days.
Okay, in the east, it's easy because it's all about this high. It settles overhead for tomorrow night and Wednesday over New York State, moves out to Cape Cod, then it jumps back west into Pennsylvania, then back east to Cape Cod, and then we see, of course, Francine coming inland, moving northward along the Mississippi River. Then it just kind of comes to a stop, the center does, in Arkansas, in northeast Arkansas, and then the actual low level center on the GFS just pretty much disappears. And in the east and in the northeast, it's all about high pressure, which jumps back to New York State. I haven't seen something like this in a long time where, the high goes out, builds back inland, goes out, builds back inland. But that's the kind of pattern we're in. And again, with that big upper high the way it is, the dew points can't come up. And as we go through the weekend, there's a trough that's going to be in Atlantic Canada that's going to move southeastward, and another high is going to drop down into New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. So we'll probably see the winds go onshore beginning later on Sunday and then being onshore for the first part of next week. Now, this particular run wants to shove whatever energy is left to the southeast coast and then start lifting it northward through Monday afternoon. It's got some rain into North Carolina and Virginia, and it actually brings rain up to New York City by Tuesday evening. So, you know, is that real? I don't know. The GFS on the 12Z run had a much, more of the system just kind of hanging off the southeast coast for a much longer period of time, and then it becoming another tropical system, or maybe it's the same one. I don't know how they would play this because I guess they have to follow if it's old remnants or just a new system. But it started to develop another system off the southeast coast. But this is talking about September 22nd and beyond, which it moved straight northward up the coast. I don't know how real that is. But with that block there, some weird things could start to happen. We may start seeing the models do some weird things over the next few days. And the European today kind of looked like what the GFS was doing, but it keeps it dry in the Northeast and the Mid Atlantic right through next Thursday. It does have energy that winds up going up off the Southeast coast, but again, that higher pressures and that blocky high just keeps things dry right through the middle part of next week.
And that could change because about a week ago, on the long range models, uh, we had that system off the southeast coast aiming like up along the eastern seaboard and seemingly bringing us a nasty rainstorm around the 18th or 19th. Now that has apparently gone by the board, but a lot can change between now and 10 days from now in terms of what may ultimately happen. So
You
it
know,
looks like right now that we're in a dry spell and may stay in a dry spell for a while. We'll see. It ultimately, of course, is going to break somehow or other, and maybe it will break on the 18th. Maybe the models will switch gears and change their minds respectively. But for the moment, at least, we're in a period of nice dry weather.
okay. I think that pretty well covers everything that's going on. So let's do a little Briller Jeopardy here. By the way, my welcome to everybody tonight on the chat board. It's nice to see everybody here. Welcome to those of you who are new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, or maybe you're not new and you just like to linger and lurk in the background. We love you too. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. We're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m., Fridays and Saturdays, usually off days unless there's a storm pending. And if we're going to do an extra show or two, we certainly will let you know about it. If you like the show, hit the like button. And just to let everybody know, I mentioned this yesterday that So Joe, they moved poker night from Thursday to Wednesday. So we'll probably have a later start on Wednesday. Figure 8:30. Maybe as late as 8:45.
So we
So
won't have a late start on Thursday. It'll be on Wednesday.
it'll be on Wednesday instead of Thursday. Yes. So a late start. Anyway, I can't turn down poker night.
I, I
Uh,
I don't know how to play poker, so I wouldn't be able to, make any kind of a commentary about on this.
okay. So here we go. Tonight it's average highs in September, Joe. Average highs in September. So we can start with what is it average highs? Average lows. Okay, I thought the numbers were too low. Average lows for September, beginning with Atlanta.
Average lows now, you say?
Average lows.
All right, for Atlanta, I'll say 55.
55 in Atlanta. 55 for me, maybe. No, that's hideously too low.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm
J-
wow.
James Fox at 65. You are oh so close. And Patrick Darcy and Alan Rupa at 67. You are oh, and Christina Pedia and Northern Grace, you are oh so close. So that means that Vincent Croce waits for that so he could do the math. And Chuck Cardillo at 66. Chuck, I hope your neck's feeling better, by the way. Chuck's got a issue with his neck, so he can't move it. So he's like scrunched around five or six pillows and keeping his head focused on the screen. So I'm glad to see you on the chat board. And feel better. Boston, Joe, Boston.
Ah, okay. 55. How about 57?
How about 57? Now that's a much better guess, Joe. Much better guess. And
Okay.
Christina Pedia gets it, and so does Northern Grace at 58. 58 for Boston. Uh, the great city of Chicago.
Chicago, I will say, well, I'll say not too much different from Boston. I'll say 59.
Ring the bell.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. There you go.
Ring the bell, please. Okay, Dallas for Dallas. Dallas, everybody. We're on to Dallas.
All right. How about 73?
That's just a little too high. A little too high with the 73. John Melander and Chasing Waterfalls gets it at 70. 70.
And North
And and we will finish with
Frank Scalera at 70.
yeah. And Honolulu, Joe.
Honey,
Honolulu.
how about 73?
Uh 73 is a good guess. Northern Grace 83 is not a good guess. It's too high. Chasing Waterfalls gets it, and so does Jason Fox and Christina Pedia and Mike Waterhouse at 75. 75.
Lovely.
And the raccoon cemeteries in Bismarck, North Dakota.
The Raccoon National Cemetery is indeed in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Well, then you need to know what the we need to know what the average low temperature is at the Raccoon National Cemetery.
How about 50?
Oh, I wanted you to ring the bell. You're so
And I
close.
got it again?
No, you didn't. You just missed. No, you missed it. Bismarck. Chuck Cardillo and 49. You can ring the bell for Chuck.
I will do that. He's a very long-standing member of the club.
Yes,
Congratulations.
he is. Yes, he is.
And Joe,
All
if
right.
I ever if I ever, in the long span of time that we've known each other, if I ever get a chance to be named Raccoon of the Year, the first order of business for me is to make sure that you get buried in the Raccoon National
Thank
Cemetery.
you. Yes. You ought to go to the WestCon with a raccoon hat with the
Yeah,
tail, and then you could woo them.
I could woo woo them, and maybe some 6-year-old kid will say, "Gee, I didn't know Davy Crockett was so thin."
Yeah, exactly. All right. Just a reminder that tomorrow's our regular time at 7:35. Wednesday will probably be at 8:30, maybe 8:45 for a start. So just mark it
And
down.
and just to make it clear, Joe and Joe, we will not repeat. We will not be live streaming tomorrow night's debate on the Joe and Joe Weather Network. You'll have to watch some other or listen to some other place to hear or see
Well,
that.
unfortunately, it's also on at the same time where with Perry Mason on from 8 to 10. So after the show is done, I'm going to watch some more of season one of
And
Perry
just
Mason.
does the bell bother Mr. Sweeney? Says Latex Stream. First of all, Mr. Sweeney is upstairs, so he doesn't hear the bell. So there's no problem there. I do want to mention that in the New York tri-state area, if you flick on your TV tomorrow night, that debate will be on virtually every channel save for two. And I'm amazed to say this, News 12, which for so many other events, big events, never, had events such as the debate. They're actually going to carry the debate tomorrow night, much to my surprise. But there are two stations in New York, Joe, that will not carry the debate tomorrow night. Channel 9, which I call the Family Feud Network, because if you flick on Channel 9, WWOR here in New York, about 18 out of the 24 hours that they're on the air, that's all they ever show is Family Feud with Steve Harvey. And
Yeah,
the
I
other
know.
and the other station is Channel 11, the New York's very own Channel 11. They are not going to cover the debate tomorrow night. So I don't know why, but they are. But every other station, the Spanish stations,
There's not
uh,
a lack of stations you're not wanting. You can watch it on.
well, I know my channel.
Everybody's got either, if you don't have cable or you're streaming, so everybody's got all the various networks.
I'm sure that Channel 11 is not broadcasting the debate because they don't want anybody to miss a minute of Mr. G's forecast.
I was having a
So
really good
that was your
night.
that
I
was your
really was having a very good night. Now you had to go down that particular road, right?
good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.